Voyage.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar. Zero patience for slow walkers. Those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night. Have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
My name is Dr. Steve Farber. I was a respected and accomplished doctor. I was also a drug addict. I was trying to live in two separate, incompatible worlds, and these two worlds would crash into each other when a woman I cared deeply for died in my bed.
This is Steve. He went from a life that, on the outside, most people would envy, to a descent into drug addiction that took everything from him before he could find a way out. This is his story.
The first time I'd used an illegal substance was the day of my sister's wedding. And it was a day that was a big turning point in my life. It was a day that I would say had ripple effects through my entire life. To just give you a little bit of background, I lived a very straight life. For most of my upbringing, I led a very narrow, restricted life. Basically, I was a nerd. And I never used drugs, never drank alcohol. And the day of my sister's wedding, I visited a friend of mine who spiked cookies with marijuana. And I wound up eating a couple of these cookies and started hallucinating. It was a day that essentially ruined my sister's wedding. I was one of the ushers in the wedding, and I went to the hospital. People all thought that I was incredibly ill and were holding the wedding up for me till I got there and then found out that I'd used drugs that day. The shame of that day, people thinking that I was a drug addict, it led to incredible shame, and it was something that I have not lived down for most of my life. I think my sister didn't forgive me for many, many years. I think that filled me with a lot of shame and feelings of remorse. And if there was anything that I could do over in my life, there was one day I could do over, it would be that day. But I think that day really kind of foretold what I was going to become. Before that, I'd never even drank alcohol, never used any drugs, had no intention of using drugs. I was brought up in a very strict family, very conservative family, and the thought of using drugs was not even something that I even thought about. All I did was study. I'd had very little social life. Never drank in college. This was in my 20s, the day of my sister's wedding. I was in my 20s. And it's just one of those things that I think compounded upon other things that had happened early in my life. Led to feeling really bad about myself. Feelings of low self-worth, low self-esteem. And, I think that led to other problems later in my life. Well, I think I was really sort of source of ridicule, that day from my own family. And I felt turned on by some of my family because they felt that I had done this intentionally. And it almost was like a self-fulfilling prophecy of what was going to happen later, I think, for me in my life. I think from that day on, I think that I was an addict at that point.
When Steve would exhibit addict behavior in medical school, he was able to get a handle on it. Steve's ability to be high-functioning despite addiction would be a hallmark of his life.
Well, I was going to medical school and really had one problem actually in medical school. In my third year of school, I started drinking fairly heavily. I met a friend who loved scotch, and we used to go out and drink during our training. That was my introduction to alcohol. But at that point, it was relatively controlled when I was in medical school. I never drank to the point of it interfering with my ability to function.
Steve lost 5 friends to suicide during his residency training. He would often work 36 hours straight with no sleep. The residency training was like a hazing process to weed out those not strong enough. Not just for Steve, but for many doctors. This sort of working pattern leads to exhaustion, chronic fatigue, depression, and medical errors. Addiction is not uncommon in the medical field, and Steve's story certainly is not unique amongst doctors, with this as a potential contributing cause.
It really wasn't until I was in my residency training, I think it was my second year of training in my residency program, where I started drinking to the point of not being able to function, not being able to wake up in the morning to make my rounds and really adequately take care of my patients. And it was noticed by my peers and by the people who supervised me. And I was called into the office of the chairman of the Department of Medicine, and he had a long discussion with me and wanted me to take time off. I guess at that point, he didn't recommend that I go to any kind of treatment, just recommended I go home and take care of myself, get some rest, and come back to work. So that was never something that was reported. I was never referred to any kind of counseling. I think he just recommended I take time off. And then later I came back and I was able to function. I really wish that it was not as lenient. I wish he had taken more action to try to get me into a program to help me. I'm not sure if I was at a point where I would have accepted it in that time in my life. But I think at this stage, if this had happened, I think there would be stricter rules about it. There's more addiction in the medical profession, I think, than people know about. And I think there would have been stricter consequences now if it had happened.
And I was actually able to function.
And I made the time off help because I was burned out. And I think at that time, I attributed my drinking to just overwork and fatigue. I think there were personal problems that I had from early in my life. There was emotional problems I had that never were addressed. And I think that led to a lot of my drinking, but it essentially calmed down for a period of time where I didn't drink excessively after that. One day, a drug representative came to my office. We routinely had drug company reps come in to tell us about their latest and greatest drugs. And he told me about this medication called Xanax, which was a relatively new medication at that time, as the new benzodiazepine-related drug that is used for anxiety. And he left about 100 pills in my office. And at that time, there was really no accounting for these. Nowadays, these things just can't be left. These stock bottles can't just be left in offices like that. But back in the 80s, that was really commonplace. And he described it as being non-addictive. That's the first benzo that came out that was not addictive. I was feeling a lot of anxiety in my life and depression. Actually, both was starting to build up more and more the harder I worked. And I decided, heck, I'm going to try this. Xanax was a very good drug from the standpoint of anxiety. It made me feel even less depressed. It worked. But I soon found out over time that the effects of the drug were not what they're advertised to be. From the standpoint of being non-addicting, I found I had to increase the dose more and more. They developed a tolerance to the medications where one pill wasn't enough. 2 pills, weren't enough. 0.5 milligram is not enough. I had to go up to 2 or 3. This drug is now a street drug. Xanax, they're called bars, and these are sold on the street 20 years later. But at that time, I decided to sample and self-medicate. And over time, I became more and more dependent and started interfering with my ability to function, both at work and at home, and interfered with my ability to even take care of my kids. Because I was always spaced out on Xanax to where I'd miss things. I would be careless about things. And Xanax definitely had an effect, and it's not a drug you can stop abruptly. When you're taking a benzodiazepine of any kind, you have to taper off the drug. And it took me about 6 months and going through a divorce to do that. If I didn't come off the drug, I was not going to be able to see my kids after my divorce. So it took a divorce actually for me to get off the drugs. That was one of the things that led to my divorce. So I tapered off the drugs so I could see my kids. It took about 6 months for me to get off the drug.
Again and again, Steve would develop an addiction and find a way to either get off it or work through it.
I could work my way out of any situation. I could function through anything. And there's no scenario that I couldn't beat. Essentially, there was no win scenario. And I kind of envisioned myself as a Captain Kirk of medicine in a sense. I couldn't lose. I would be able to work my way out of any situation that presented itself. I think if I was in a corner, boxed into a corner, I'd be able to find my way out.
Steve often thought of Captain Kirk and the Kobayashi Maru.
It's a no-win scenario, and Captain Kirk figured out a way to beat the no-win scenario, altering the rules of the test.
Steve was confident not only could he be a functioning addict, but he could thrive in any situation while using drugs. He described himself, at that time in his life, as an addict who was an egomaniac with an inferiority complex.
I think I went a number of years without using any types of drugs, and really the suffering from depression and anxiety, which were mounting over the course of time. I was burning the candle at both ends of my life, working 14 to 16-hour days over the course of many, many years. A lot of things happened in my practice. I had a partner that brought in named Charlie Brown, who was also a very hard worker. He was, basically also burning the candle at both ends, and he passed away. He died in my office while we're seeing patients. He was a person who would always take care of other people before he'd take care of himself. I'd see him in the hallway, and he was an asthmatic, and he was constantly using his inhaler all the time in the hallway while he was seeing patients. And I said to him, "Look, Charlie, you got to go see a doctor. You have to go get your asthma taken care of." But he never took the time to do that. He was always working, and then he had 2 small children at home, so he'd go home to his family and then come back to work, and this cycle repeated itself every day. One day we were seeing patients in the office, found him on the floor in the bathroom. We couldn't find him initially, and where's Charlie? We're both seeing patients, and he just disappeared. And I found him on the floor of the bathroom and tried to resuscitate him for about 2 hours, and did CPR on my own partner. Couldn't bring him back. He was too far gone, and I had to be the one to go tell his wife that he passed away, and 2 small children. That was devastating to me. Losing my partner like that, I think was just something that I never really recovered from, just not being able to bring him back. And it really should have taught me a lesson about burning the candle at both ends, but it really didn't. So I think I worked even harder after that.
Ironically, being a doctor seemed like a good fit for Steve's addictions.
Medicine's a perfect profession for an addict. Being a workaholic is an addiction in and of itself. It's a perfect career for some people who are addicted to things and want to escape their personal problems, because the harder you work, the more you're rewarded by your patients and peers. I think a profession where there are a lot of people with a lot of psychiatric problems or psychological problems, let's put it that way, who can work so hard that they don't have to think about their issues. And I think between Charlie's death and just the depression I was suffering, anxiety, that things just mounted over time. And I got involved in a vicious cycle of anxiety and depression. I saw a lot of death in my practice. That's part of being a cardiologist. And I lost patients in the cath lab. That was devastating to me. Just losing a patient is devastating. I expected a lot from myself. I expected that none of my patients would die, for example. I expected that I'd be able to save everybody, and that just wasn't reality. I just couldn't do that. That was really not in my hands. But I took death personally. A patient of mine died, I took it personally, and felt that I was a failure when my patients passed. And I beat myself up over negative things that would happen. And I think over time, I just got desperate, more and more desperate, to get out of a cycle of depression and anxiety. And a friend of mine recommended that I go to a place called the Wildflower Retreat, which was a massage parlor, essentially.
This visit would change the course of Steve's life.
The exterior of the building looked distressed and uninviting, more like an old boarded-up shack than a place in which one would supposedly relax and be pampered. Its rundown facade was broken by a few darkened windows, which, to my amped-up imagination, gave it a somewhat intriguing appearance. What lay behind those panes of dirty glass? I hesitated a moment to draw one last deep breath before opening the door and stepping into a dimly lit room. The first thing my eyes focused on were a candle and an incense burner on the counter. Next, they saw an attractive blonde woman wearing a see-through negligee. As I stood frozen with my jaw no doubt hanging ajar, the woman came to the counter and asked quite professionally whether I had made an appointment. Red-faced from embarrassment, I told her that I hadn't arranged anything and wondered if I could be worked in. Work me in? What was I doing? I felt like I was at the barbershop or dentist office. The hostess left for a few moments. My eyes darted to the door, but truth be told, I really didn't want to leave. And in only a few moments, the hostess came back, accompanied by an available masseuse. She appeared to be in her late 20s or early 30s, with brown hair and a confident look in her eyes. Her voice was soft and alluring as she greeted me, and without further ceremony, she motioned for me to follow her up a flight of stairs. I've never done this before.
I'm Tara. Go in the first door on the right.
By this time, I was sweating profusely, and my shirt was soaking wet. Tara led me into a small, dimly lit room, sat beside me, and laid down the ground rules as if we were about to play baseball. The heavy smell of her perfume permeated the room. To Tara, this was a business transaction, and she wanted to discuss the specifics of our agreement. I was on her home turf, and she made it clear she was the boss.
You need to give me $200.
Fumbling to take my wallet out of my trousers, I counted out the appropriate amount of bills. She reminded me that there was an ATM in the waiting room if I needed it. I handed the cash to Tara, feeling both anticipation and shame.
Relax. Let me take care of you.
My mind raced through the pleasurable moments of the encounter, but those were soon followed by a sense of guilt. What have I done? I had paid for sex for the first time in my life and put my health at risk, not to mention the fact that what I did was morally wrong, I agonized. And yet, I couldn't deny to myself that it felt extremely empowering and just plain good to have done something taboo and gotten away with it. Before I left that night, Tara and I agreed to meet again. And I irrationally told myself that another rendezvous wouldn't hurt a soul, especially if we kept the details a secret. I'll keep things discreet and under control, I told myself, and nobody will be the wiser. I didn't recognize how bad my judgment was until much later, when I realized that giving my phone number to Tara was literally a fatal mistake that dramatically changed both of our lives.
I was very lucky because the week after I went there was raided by the police. And if I'd been there during that raid, I would have been arrested. Tara was intriguing to me. I met her, and the situation was really basically transactional. It was money for sex, and then it became money for drugs later. After the massage, so to speak, whatever you call it, I got her phone number, and we connected after that. We both hit it off. It became more than a sexual type of relationship, a transactional relationship. And I started seeing her on a regular basis.
Tara called me and asked to see me that night. With little hesitation, I gave her directions to my home in an upscale neighborhood in North Houston. We planned a late-night rendezvous so that my neighbors would not become suspicious. I anxiously waited for her to arrive. Tara was right on schedule. As soon as I'd closed the door behind her, Tara gave me an embrace, set her purse down on the kitchen table, and gave me a mischievous smile that was innocent and sensual at the same time. I made her an appletini. She stood up and walked over to the fireplace, pulling off her boots as she did. Then, as my heart began to race, she put her hands above her head, playfully swiveled her hips, and shimmied her body.
Come with me.
As confidently as if she was in her own home, Tara walked into the kitchen. Then she opened up a plastic baggie of cocaine and made thin white lines on the counter.
The Wildflower got raided
When?
2 days ago.
Only a week after I'd been there. Were you there?
Yep.
Did you get arrested?
Spent the night in county. I asked if they would let me keep the handcuffs. They didn't think that was funny.
My God, I thought. What would have happened if I had been there? I thanked my lucky stars for this narrow escape and totally ignored the bright red flag that was waving in my face as Tara offered me a line of cocaine.
You want some?
Where'd you get this?
My guy Jack. You'd like him. He's a doctor like you.
A cardiologist?
Chiropractor.
She made me feel like I was living life in the fast lane rather than in the rut that had been my home for over a year. Tara brought excitement into my life. In fact, looking back, I believe that I became addicted to the adrenaline surge I felt when I was with her. If I'd been interested in honest answers at that point, I'd have been forced to admit that cocaine already had control over my life, and there was no logic in anything I did. I was powerless over the tiny pieces of white powder I snorted up my nostrils with a rolled-up dollar bill, and I wasn't interested in stopping, in spite of uncomfortable side effects of shakiness, anxiety, and insomnia. Instead, I sped down the road even faster.
Cocaine initially made Steve feel more energetic, more efficient. It was like taking Adderall for a person with ADD. It made Steve feel like Superman. He could perform his duties faster and more efficiently, and it improved his depression. He thought he had it under control, at least at the beginning.
Eventually, cocaine led to using other things, methamphetamines, crack cocaine. And crack cocaine is a really horrible drug to take as far as addiction goes. It's even harder than cocaine to beat. Again, one thing led to another, and the side effects started to mount. Over a period of time, even though I thought I could control it, I was out of control. And I think it was started getting noticed by other people. I was normally a very even-tempered, in a way, mild-mannered person. I was always the one that people would go to if they're looking for somebody who is even-tempered to try to train other people. In the cath lab, they always gave me the new nurses to train because I was very patient. That all changed very quickly. I started getting angry. I started getting agitated. My hands started to shake. People started noticing that. I changed my personality. I started getting paranoid. Started imagining things that were not real. Again, I kept using. I didn't get very much sleep because cocaine kept me awake most of the night. And Tara would give me cocaine in the morning, and I'd go to work on cocaine. I think it started affecting me. My staff started noticing things that were changes in me. Again, my personality totally changed from the person I had been before. I was a totally different person on cocaine and on crack cocaine than it was. I think that we were both round pegs that couldn't fit into square holes, in a sense. We both, I think, were lost in a way, looking for something in our lives that was not attainable. And we fit together. We're kindred spirits in a lot of ways. You know, she was intriguing to me. She was a very nice person, very good person. I got to know her very well.
The more time I spent with Tara, the more it became a real relationship. Does your family know what you do?
No.
Stupid question, I guess.
Hey, what do you know about real estate?
Why?
There's this neighborhood. It's close to where I grew up. And it was always, honestly, like, super shitty. Like liquor stores and check cashing places and stuff like that. But some developers bought land near it, and they're building this high-end apartment complex. And I know a couple of the old businesses that are open and were got sold, and they're building restaurants there. There's a lot on that block that's for sale. In a couple of years, it's going to be worth something.
Do you know how much it's going for?
No, but I could find out.
What would you do with it?
I don't know yet. Maybe just hold it and sell it in a few years. Maybe build something on it.
Like what?
Well, you know what the profit margin is on donuts?
I hadn't looked into it.
I did. Raw material for a donut only costs like 10 cents. You can sell that donut for $1. And if I can make it seem premium, maybe $3? You know what else has a high margin?
Coffee?
I knew you were smart. If it's in a neighborhood that feels fancy, maybe I make fake edible gold leaf and put it on the donuts. Sell them for $5 each. That's a business.
You're serious about this?
My work has an expiration date.
With you in that donut shop, every father within a 10-mile radius would be coming in every day.
Would you be jealous?
Desperately.
I'll find out what the lot costs.
Do that.
I think for the point in our lives where we were desperation type mode, I was desperate to get out of my cycle, my abyss of shame and of depression. I was in a sinkhole at that point in my life. I'd pretty much reached close to my rock bottom. And I think she was also homeless and was looking for something that was unreachable at that time in her life as well. Well, we both were sexually abused in our earlier years. And I think we both felt shame from that. We both could relate to each other because of that and had empathy for each other because we both had gone through the same thing growing up. It affects you for the rest of your life. And you have to be able to reach a point where you can work through it. And we hadn't worked through that, but we were able to talk about it with each other. It was something that I really couldn't talk about with people. I pretty much kept it dormant in the back of my mind. It was like a cattle brand back there. It was like a hot poker that was in my brain that I just couldn't get rid of. And I think it was the same for her. We both could relate to each other on a level that neither of us could relate with anybody else. Yeah, even I deceived my closest friends. I had a really good friend named Mike, and he was closest to me than anybody else. He was not a doctor, and he and I could talk about anything, but this is one subject that we couldn't talk about. I couldn't talk with anybody about. I hid it, and I lied to him about my addiction as well. I refused to even talk to him about my problems using drugs at that point. And I'm not sure why. I have people come to me later say, why didn't you talk to me about this? And I just couldn't. I don't know if it was because I couldn't admit my weaknesses to somebody else or couldn't admit my shame, my guilt that I felt at that point to anybody. But I lived a double life. My whole career was like a facade covering over all the hurt and shame and guilt that I felt from my earliest years and even into my adulthood. I carried that shame and guilt and feeling dirty and unworthy. And I was always looking for love and didn't want to disappoint anybody. And with Tara, I didn't have those feelings, fear of talking. I felt I could talk to her about pretty much anything. And I didn't have that relationship with anybody else.
Steve's relationship with Tara would conclude in a way he could never have anticipated.
That morning, I went to work. I left Tara actually in very good spirits.
After a family disagreement, Tara had been asked to leave her sister's home in Houston. She called me and said she had nowhere to go and begged to stay at my house temporarily. I liked the fact that it made it easier for us to use drugs together. She usually met with her dealer during the day while I was at work, and she had fresh lines ready for me as soon as I arrived home. Things were no different from the usual when I left for work at about 7 o'clock on that particular Friday morning.
Morning.
Oh, hello.
Your medicine, doctor?
As she often did, Tara had brought me a line of cocaine on a small plate while I was still lying in bed. She accompanied me to the front door. She seemed happy and cheerful that morning, flashing that contagious, childlike smile that belied the realities of her lifestyle. What's on tap for you today?
I have to pick up my dry cleaning. I'm going to spin by that lot and take down the number on the sign and call it. And then I'm going to take the best, laziest nap ever.
Sounds great. That didn't seem at all odd to me. I knew that she hadn't slept in several days due to her heavy use of stimulants. She kissed me on the cheek. I left. I arrived home from work at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which was unusually early for me. Much to my surprise, my son's pickup truck was parked in the driveway. He was a student at the University of Houston at the time, and he frequently came to visit me. Normally, his pickup truck was a welcome sight, but now a flash of panic shot through me as I realized that he might have discovered that a young woman was staying with his father. Definitely not a detail I wanted my children to know. Of course, there was no way that my son would know she was a prostitute. I was worrying for nothing and being paranoid. Cocaine always had that effect on me. Still, I was nervous and uncomfortable as I opened the front gate and unlocked the front door. Steeling myself for potential embarrassment, I entered the house, expecting to find that my son had already discovered Tara's presence. To my momentary relief, the bedroom door was closed and the house was silent except for the television in the living room. My son was watching a movie and had no idea that he wasn't alone in the house. As usual, he turned the TV volume up pretty high. How could anyone sleep through all that noise, I wondered, though I was grateful that Tara apparently had. I directed a perfunctory, "Hello, how are you?" at my son, and then walked into the bedroom with the intention of telling Tara to stay in hiding or at least be discreet if she met my son. The room was dimly lit, and the blinds were closed, and all I could make out was a shadowy figure lying face down in my bed. Good, she's still asleep, I thought. This was a close call. I tiptoed to the bed, pulled the blanket down, and whispered, "Wake up, honey." Nothing. I repeated the same words a little louder. "Wake up, honey." Still no response. I tried to shake Tara awake, but she didn't respond or move at all in spite of my jostling. Fear suddenly crept over me as I realized that something was terribly amiss. As I turned Tara over with great difficulty in one of the most terrifying and sickening moments of my life, I realized that she was not breathing. Frantic, I felt for her carotid pulse but couldn't find one. Meanwhile, Tara's dark eyes stared unblinkingly into space. Shock and horror overtook me as I realized that a woman to whom I had just said goodbye a few hours earlier was lying dead in my bed. As though stung, I jumped backward from the horrible vision that was before my eyes and stared back at Tara's lifeless body in disbelief. Tara had already turned a purplish hue in the dependent areas of her body due to the stasis of blood flow. Her skin was cold and mottled. My experiences as a doctor told me beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was too late to resuscitate her and that CPR would have been useless. The presence of rigor mortis forced Tara to hold her arms outstretched in a position of supplication, as if she was reaching towards something that only she could see. Her eyes were glazed over and stared straight at me with a look of sadness identifiable even through her death mask. My God, this can't be real. I am dreaming. Please, someone wake me up. Tara looked grotesque, like a disfigured mannequin stuffed in the closet and hidden from view because it appeared too fake for a store's display window. And yet, as I paced frantically around the room, it seemed that her stare followed me everywhere. The whole scene was surreal. I knew that I would wake up if I screamed loud enough, and that this death scene would turn out to be a terrible nightmare. When I realized with an overwhelming feeling of helplessness that the current moment was indeed reality, I numbly looked at the scene around the deathbed. There was a bottle of rum on the nightstand, and Tara's purse was on the floor surrounded by its contents. They included, I saw as I flicked on a lamp, about a half-dozen open pill bottles and an empty bottle of cough medicine that I myself had prescribed for her the day before. I picked up the bottles and read the names of the medications: pain pills, sedatives, an antidepressant, and a bottle of sleeping pills. Tara must have taken them to counteract the effects of the cocaine that she'd consumed the night before. I'd seen her inhale an entire 8-ball, and while I was asleep, she was likely to have consumed more. I wondered how much she could have taken last night while I slept and today while I was at work. I read the names of 3 different doctors on the prescription labels, and I was shocked to see that she'd been getting these medications from so many doctors besides myself. I didn't recognize their names. Until that moment, I had been unaware that she was seeing other physicians and that she was receiving prescriptions from them as well as from me. Tara loved to wear my t-shirts. Today, I saw she had decided to wear her favorite, one she loved so much that I'd given it to her to keep. Ironically, horribly, it said in big bold letters, "Trust me, I'm a doctor." At that moment, I fell apart, and my son walked into the bedroom and saw me on my knees sobbing next to Tara's body. His face turned ashen as he realized what had happened, if not why. It is a scene that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
I started crying because here's a woman in my bed who I knew very well, who I started to care about, who was lying dead in my bed. After I found her, I called 911. The ambulance came. The police came soon after and started doing a search at my house. All the neighbors were out in the street watching what was going on. So with the police cars, they took Tara's body out of the house. And the fear is, what would my son think about me? What after effects would this have on my son? I was afraid for him, and the police questioned my son and me about her death and what led up to it. And I was really concerned that they were to find cocaine in my house and arrest me for using cocaine. Tara and I would use the cocaine and put it in the safe in our closet. The police came and searched. There were no pieces of cocaine lying around. Tara must have cleaned that up before she went to bed. The police never actually found a cocaine notice in my safe. It was later determined that she died of that smell overdose, but I had actually prescribed the hydrocodone that she'd used to help kill herself. Whether she did, I don't believe she did it intentionally. I believe that this was an accident because I had no at all any feeling from her that she wanted to die. If anything, she was looking forward to a different life and to getting more out of life than what she'd gotten. I started to get more and more agitated and angry during my cases. For example, if something didn't go right, I would really get angry and throw my fist to the wall. And that's something I never used to do before. There was a time when I was talking to a family where I actually suffered from a blackout. I was in the middle of discussing a case I just finished. I was sitting in front of the family, my nurse practitioner was with me. In the middle of a sentence, I just stopped talking. And I was in a state of basically totally being out of it and blacked out. I was sitting there, I didn't fall on the floor, I was just sitting there staring straight ahead, and my nurse practitioner said to me, "Dr. Farber, what's going on? Please wake up, please wake up." And then I woke up to see the family staring at me in disbelief. What is going on with this doctor? That we just put our trust in you to take care of our family member. And here you're talking to us and suddenly, you stop talking and you're just in a state of staring at us and not saying anything. So I could tell at that point in time, things were starting to fall apart in my life.
Steve's employees would ultimately stage an intervention.
They came into my room and told me that they knew what was going on, and if I didn't quit using drugs and go to rehab, that they were all going to resign. One of them actually came to me and said that she was going to report me to the medical board if I didn't quit. That was one of the things that led to my going to Talbot Recovery Center December 2006. They knew what was going on, and one of them told me something I'll never forget, which was, "Dr. Farber, I'll never, in your current state, refer my family member to you." That hurt me tremendously because to hear that from somebody who I worked with was very tough to hear. And the reality started hitting home that this was really something I needed to address. So I half-heartedly addressed it at that point. And I think part of that was just to help them basically feel that I was going to do the right thing and to, basically keep them working with me. So I decided to go to the Talbot Recovery Center after that, which was a place where a lot of doctors went to. I really did it secretively. I didn't want anybody to know about it, so nobody other than my office staff knew what was happening. So I took a leave of absence. It was really, again, to pacify them more than to really seriously try to recover. When I was in Talbot, I half-heartedly worked the program. I went through the motions. I was never really serious about it. I got homesick, decided after 2 weeks I was going to leave. Went back, thinking, well, okay, I can control this situation, and I was totally wrong. I was not ready at that point in time to really address my issues. I don't think I'd hit my bottom yet. The bottom was losing my license.
Tara's death led directly to Steve losing his medical license.
Tara's family found out about the situation regarding my writing a prescription for the hydrocodone for her and reported me to the medical board. The medical board met early in 2007 and they suspended my medical license. And I lost everything in a heartbeat. Everything that I worked hard for many years to attain, both financially and professionally, were totally gone. And it took losing my license to really make me realize that something had to change. That was my bottom, losing pretty much everything that I'd had. And I'd worked really hard for it. After I lost my license, I went to the recovery center. I realized that I needed to address the issues that I'd had dealt with for many years, but I camouflaged behind my career. And those issues primarily related to my depression and burnout. I went to a clinic called Menninger Clinic, which is a dual diagnosis facility. And Menninger Clinic forced me to peel the onion, as they described it, and peel back my ego, peel back my defense mechanisms, and made me realize that what was really behind all this situation to begin with and really take the time for myself to really address my issues that have been festering for many years. At the recovery center, they give you a lot of tools to try to work with, to try to keep you sober. And the easiest thing is to be sober. The hardest thing is to maintain being sober. You have to realize what your triggers are. And one of the triggers for me was Tara's youthfulness or exuberance and sexuality. I met a young woman on the plane after I left the recovery center who was almost identical to her. Had the same personality as Tara, was actually worked in a dance club. I suppose a stripper, although we didn't actually get into that, but she was an exotic dancer, I believe. Gave me her phone number. As we left the plane, she put her hand on my leg, was leaning against me during the flight, and was very much making it very clear that she wanted to have something more after we left the plane. She gave me her phone number, and at first, I was very interested in responding positively to what she was doing, to her overtures. I'd run up throwing the phone number away because I didn't want to get back into the same situation I was in before, because I know what would have happened if I had called her. Things would have gone down the same path that they were before, and I just didn't want to risk that possibility. I'd worked too hard over too many months to try to determine what was behind all of this. I just didn't want to risk my sobriety. I was still very fragile at that point in time. My sobriety was very fragile. I'm very glad that I did not follow through with that. My whole career was a Jekyll and Hyde type of career. I was Dr. Jekyll, and there was Mr. Hyde that I was hiding the whole time. My career was a facade for a very much failed personal life, an unhappy personal life. I went through multiple divorces and had a very unhappy personal life outside of work. I always thought I'd be a good father to my children, really bad husband. Work was my life. I think that I threw a lot away at that point in time. I was a split personality while I was working. I was a successful failure, you might call it. I was successful on the surface, but a failure in my personal life and very unhappy in my personal life. I had to work really hard to get my license back. It took me about 8 years to get my license back. The medical board had me drug test for about 8 years, and I had to pass. I didn't fail a drug test for 8 years. I didn't miss a drug test, and they made me jump through a lot of hoops to get back to work. I feel that I'm at a place right now in my life that I'm very thankful for. I feel gratitude every day for where I'm at. I feel I'm where God wants me to be right now. I feel like I'm helping people. I'm where I'm meant to be. Married to a wonderful woman. I feel that I couldn't be living a better life right now. People have come to me and said, gee, Dr. Farber, you threw your life away. And I tell them, look at what life that I have. I had a miserable life at that point in my career, and my life was extremely unhappy. So I don't feel like I threw my life away or threw my career away. I feel like I threw away a lot of guilt, shame, and unhappiness, and was able to create something much better. This podcast is dedicated to the memory of my son, Matthew Brian Farber.
The National Mental Health Hotline is available 24/7 just by dialing 988 from your phone. And for healthcare workers suffering from burnout or just in need of mental health support, the Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation is a great resource. More information and links are in the show notes. Hope Lives Here is a production of Voyage Media. The series is produced by Nat Mundell, Robert Midas, and Dan Benamore. This episode, As Sick as Our Secrets, is based on Steve's book of the same name, which is available on Amazon. A link is in the show notes. Executive produced by Dr. Steve Farber. Directed and story produced by Alyssa Goodman. Written and directed by Dan Benamore. Edited, sound designed, and mixed by James Scully. Original music by Derlis Gonzalez. Starring Jonathan Regier as Steve and Veronica Warner as Tara. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you're listening, and subscribe now for future episodes.